to have that compassion and empathy and understanding, I think that's what makes leaders, and to be able to use that to help people adapt to situations. I think that's really key. And if you can't figure it out, and if you're that leader that wrings your hands and can't make a decision, you need to figure that out,
Yeah.
or have a strong number two who will help guide you through that, or have a good mentor that will help you
Yeah.
guide you through that situation.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know what to call it, like the tenets of the weapons school and the Air Force are humble, credible, and approachable.
Yes.
You're never better than anyone else. Like, I mean, they've got a lot of experience, but you always have to be humble and always know that there's something more that you could learn.
Yes.
Credible, like you got to do your job. And I think, especially as a woman leader, but anybody who wants to be a better leader, just lead by example. That's the best way.
Absolutely. So yeah, open door policy. People could come in your office, but your door is open. So get your ass out and go talk to people.
Yeah, for sure.
All fire, no smoke is our candid conversation as two military aviators sharing the unique experiences we've had in combat, reconnaissance, and demonstration flying.
Through personal stories, technical details, and laughter, we explore the challenges of balancing leadership, motherhood, professional life, all while offering inspiring insights for those who are trying to strike that work-life balance.
I'm Meryl Tangestal, retired Air Force Colonel. You guys might know me as the Dragon Lady. I flew the SH-60 helicopter in the Navy before switching over to the Air Force and becoming the first and only black woman to fly the U-2 spy plane. My last job was at the Pentagon, where I was the Director of Inspection for the Inspector General.
I'm retired Lieutenant Colonel Caroline Jensen. I go by the call sign Blaze. I flew the F-16 Fighting Falcon, better known as the Viper, in the Air Force during Operation Iraqi Freedom, and was later selected as the first female reserve officer to fly with the prestigious United States Air Force Air Demonstration Squadron, known as the Thunderbirds. My son also happened to be the first kid to ever get to watch his mom fly with an advanced jet demo team.
Oh. All right, so today let's do a different term. We've been in the military. We've talked about a little bit about being kind of the first or one of the firsts in doing what we do in some high performance, unique activities. But we were in the military. So we were in the military for over 20 years, and we had the opportunity to do a lot of leadership roles and be as women leaders. It's definitely something that's changed throughout the decades, in the 1990s, starting in 94 all the way to now. So, we in the military, we go to a lot of professional military education courses. I think you and I both did PME, the first one. Air War College. Did you do Air War
I
College?
did.
I don't know. I didn't do it in residence. I did it correspondence, because there was different ways. Did you do joint PME training?
I did not do
The JPME? Yeah,
Yeah.
so did that as well. So they teach you all about leadership and different leadership styles. Sun Tzu, I don't know, name whoever. But when it comes to the practical application of taking these leadership principles and applying it to boomers,
Yeah.
Gen Xers, millennials, Gen
Yeah.
Zers, it's different. It's a different world. And it's different because of the generations in the military. But then when you take that to the civilian world, who they're not all focused on the same mission at the same time. Maybe integrity is a little sketchy. Like, what are the things as a leader that you learned in the military that can be applied maybe to the outside, or some unique leadership circumstances you had?
Yeah. I think feedback is important, and that's something that I saw in civilian life, that people have a hard time giving feedback. Some people have a hard time receiving feedback. There's HR departments and companies for a reason, because sometimes people aren't always appropriate or good at giving feedback. So I think that's something that we did get really good at in the Air Force, but I kind of liken it to being an instructor pilot,
Yeah.
especially in like pilot training when you're teaching someone how to fly for the first time. Some students can listen to you tell them how to do something on the ground and they can go out and execute it. some of them get in the air. I'm like thinking about like specifically landing an aircraft, and they go out and they can't do it. And you're like, all right, well, let me talk you through it. And so you talk them through it, and some of them can land and some of them can't. And then the next step would be like, well, let me give you a demonstration. And I'm just going to fly around the pattern so I can talk to you because you need to be received, like have your ears open. You know,
Yes.
there's some people on your team, like, you know, they need you to do it for them or tell them how or just give them a break while you demonstrate. And there are some people out there that you just really need to go like, what in the heck are you doing? And almost like give them some tough love. And then that's like when things snap. So a
Yes.
good leader can adjust their style to their team. And unfortunately or fortunately, it makes it more fun on a team. Not everyone's style of receiving input and being led is the same. So I think that the military definitely teaches us how to tailor because everybody learns differently.
Yes. Oh, and the one that you say, hey, ride the controls with me to feel the inputs and how they
Yes.
are.
Yes.
Do you feel how slight it is?
Yeah.
We do not have me hooks.
Yeah.
We do not do this.
Yeah. But one of those, you know, techniques, like the light bulb will come on and
Yes.
you're like, oh, and that's like what's great about being a leader is when you can get people to be in line with your vision, and when you can get someone to safely land an airplane too is
Yes,
wonderful.
and not kill you in the process.
Right, or try to kill you.
Try to kill you. I agree with that 100%. You learn the basics of leadership, whether you learn it from someone or you learn it in a book, but then applying it, application, there's a certain amount of compassion and empathy you have to have and understanding of yourself. I always say, if you want to lead, you need to understand yourself first.
Yeah.
And you need to lead yourself first. Because if you can't get up on time, if you can't figure out what your problems are, if you are the one who's late but makes excuses, or you're the one is, I can do whatever I want, but you can't because I'm in charge,
Mm-hmm.
that's problematic.
Yeah.
And I think we have talked about before as women, people really look at us.
Mm-hmm.
And some people will scrutinize us for everything that we do.
Yeah.
So we always have to be on point with how we lead people.
Yeah.
Especially as I got in the Navy, I learned a lot of leadership stuff in the Navy, and I was able to apply that to the Air Force, which helped a lot. I mean, in the Navy, at least going through helicopter flying, most people think helicopter pilots are really chill and relaxed, and we are, but it was definitely a eat your own
Yeah.
society, and it was kind of cutthroat in ways. And I was pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you feel that as you were developing as a leader, did you learn more or less the same from bad leadership examples as you did from good leadership examples?
Yes. Yes, I did. I had a leader, my second deployment, I deployed with the officer in charge, was a guy who was very nice, but I saw what not calling knock it off could do.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in the form of me being on the flight deck. We were under pressure because we had to do the most intricate phase out to sea. So you have maintenance phases that you have to break down the aircraft at certain stages. We were caught outside of our control with a D phase, which meant we had to take the blades off and take the aircraft apart pretty extensively, put it back together, and then balance the blades. And my maintenance guys, a lot of them were young and new. And so there was some difficulty. And I just remember the day we were trying to do a balance check on the rotors. The sea state was high, and my OIC was pushing for us to do it, which was wrong. And as we were trying to do it, the ship got into a bad sea state. Waves were going over the deck. It hit my mechanic, my
gosh.
AD2. He fell and he started rolling.
No way.
Yeah, he did. He started rolling off the flight deck, fell in the nets that were out.
No way.
Yes. And I saw that. And in the meantime, I was in the left seat. My ops guy was in the right seat. He was getting seasick. We had our air crewman in the back. And when I saw that, I got on the radio. I said, put the aircraft inside.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we're done.
Yeah.
And then my OIC was watching all this, and I went down. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, I'll talk to you in a second." And we got out. Everyone got out. I went to see him in what we call the landing safety officer shack, and he was pissed. And he's like, "We need to finish this." I said, "We're not doing it." And he basically said, "Your guys are dicking the dog." This is what his quote was.
Nice.
And I responded with some expletives. And I said, "We're done." And I walked away. So that kind of soured our relationship. But when it reminded me of an incident that happened to me when I was first a helicopter second pilot. Seeing something that goes wrong, we're done. We're not flying this anymore.
Yeah.
We're not losing the life of my 82. So
Yeah.
that put us at odds very quickly. But I realized in his desire to finish something, we were going to make a lot of mistakes and get people killed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I've seen firsthand what bad leadership looks like,
Yeah.
and that was not a good decision on his part.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'll take the shot in the face for that any day.
Yeah.
But to it's kind of wrenching when you see one of your maintenance people that you have that bond and you're connected, and yeah,
Yeah.
if he had gone in the water,
Mm-mm.
yeah, I would have been going to his parents.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've been there, done that. I don't
Have
like it.
not, thankfully.
No, I haven't. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah. Can't even imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, look.
I had somebody draw something in my hat once.
A penis?
Yes.
I've
I had to
drawn,
make it into a fish.
I can't, I'll be honest, I've drawn many a penises,
In a hat.
penis in on my friends in the YouTube. Did you read the book? No. Yeah, I drew a lot of penises and drew a lot of obscene pictures.
Little C and B. Yeah.
That's what that the kid. Look at. I drew a lot of penises. And then there was one guy who was drawing penises in the squadron, and the commander got mad. He had
Why?
Because it was during the time of Superbad. Remember in the beginning of Superbad when he was obsessed with penises and he would draw them like in marching bands.
Maybe
and
he
stuff.
was emasculated.
But this commander was like, "I want to know who's drawing penises in the squadron. It's not funny." And yeah, and then I just remember I locked eyes with another female who was PSD.
You were doing it, right?
No, I was not. But I never howled so loud in my life when he was serious and he gave me the death stare. Because I mean, I'm a major at this point.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be like, and I'm like, "I'm so sorry." And I was like, "Oh, hold on." And then he just got mad. No, it was another pilot doing it. I finally found out like this year, another pilot. And I'm like, that is the worst. That was a bad leadership move. Like, if you have a penis draw, just ignore it like a toddler and they will stop. So if someone in your command or in your job, in the civilian world, just take it to HR and just take it off your plate, but don't address it.
Yeah.
Just let them draw penises.
The title of that episode.
Yeah, well, we can put that in there. That could be a teaser. They're talking about penises.
At least we're using the anatomically correct
That's correct.
words, right?
Yes. All right, so
Okay.
I was telling my serious story about my AD almost rolling off the flight deck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, tell me, how about a specific leader for you that maybe who showed you how to be a good leader through their poor leadership?
I had a leader at one point who, anytime you brought him something, he could not make a decision. It was just like this indecisiveness. You're like, "Hey, I think we should do this," and he'd be like, "Let me think about it." And it was like either the answer is no, but he doesn't have the guts to say no, or it is he wants to consult with someone else because he doesn't have confidence in his own ability to say something. So that was really, really hard to deal with that. But one of the most interesting leaders that I ran across was someone who had been retired for a long time, and that was an infamous fighter pilot, like the quintessential fighter pilot of all fighter pilots, and his name was Robin Olds. And he was an ace. He fought in World War II, in Korea and Vietnam. If people see the picture of the mustachioed, really very handsome, fighter pilot walking across the flight line, that's General Olds. And he had come out to my squadron to do a speaking event, and I was the only woman in the squadron at the time. And it was a squadron dining in, so we're all wearing our fancy like mess dress uniform, and it's just the people in the squadron. And there's a lot of partaking of adult beverages, and especially by General Olds, who had a lot of experience and could really hold his liquor. And he was in his 80s, and he was like the last one partying at the bar at the end of the night. But before the night was over, and I've always kind of felt like a little bit weird because these men of this generation just they didn't have to even think about worrying about having a woman in their squadron. And after, enough liquid courage, the general walked up to me in the middle of the officers club, and the bar was like off to the right side. And he said, he used like some term of endearment, sweetheart, like, I think it's great you're here, but I don't know what I would do if I was your commander. And I was like, what could it be? Like, the jet doesn't know if you're a male or a female, whatever. I'm like ready to say this to him. And he says to me, and he points to the end of the bar where there's an empty seat, and he goes, what if you were one of my guys and one of my people in my squadron, and you were sitting at the end of that bar crying into your beer because somebody broke your heart? He's like, I just don't know how I would be able to handle that. And I just said to him, General, like, two things. One, why would I contact you for relationship advice? He was kind of a notoriously,
Got around.
Yeah, he was a very charming gentleman, and could use his wiles on the ladies. And also it's like, what makes you think I wouldn't be breaking the hearts? And then after that, like, everything had dissipated. So he came to me, and I'm thinking, he's like, you don't belong here. But really, his, like, the fundamental issue with him being comfortable with me was that he wanted to lead me as a person and make sure that I knew what, or he knew how to help me so that I could be like a well-rounded person and show up ready for work. So,
Because probably in his generation, World War II, different breed, right?
yeah.
Whether as a man, black, white, other, they went through, especially if you were a person of color, went through some hard times.
Yeah.
Fought for their country, then couldn't go to maybe a restaurant or something that was dedicated for someone else. But he probably was in that men are the saviors, the whole mode, and he
Mhm.
looked at you as someone like if you were hurt, like he would be like, "We ride at dawn,
Yeah.
and we're gonna
Yeah.
we're gonna take this guy who made you cry, and we're
Yeah.
gonna beat him up." Like, but he was just like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah,"
And when I was like, I can handle myself,
and he
then
was
it
like,
was like,
"Oh,
oh, cool. Yeah, it was great.
have a
So
drink."
yeah. Yeah. So it just kind of dissipated everything. And that reminds me, one more person I got to meet, Dick Cole, who was the last surviving Doolittle Raider.
Oh wow.
So flew the Doolittle Raiders were B-25s who flew off the carrier Hornet to bomb Tokyo after, like, as a response to the bombing at Pearl Harbor. And they did this mission. It was kind of a suicide mission, and ended up having to like bomb Tokyo and then continue on to China, and then hopefully, bail out and evade. And he was actually Jimmy Doolittle's co-pilot
Oh
for
nice.
also called the Doolittle Raid and the Doolittle Raiders. And I met him at an air show, and he was in his 90s, and I was like, man, this guy, and I'm wearing a civilian dress, and it was like a event that was after, and they just picked a couple of us to go to this event. And I was like, man, this guy is not going to remember me, or it's not going to click with him in his 90s. And they introduced me as Blaze, and she's Thunderbird 3. And things kind of, we like went off in a different path, and someone walked up, and Colonel Cole was like, hey, have you met Blaze? She's Thunderbird 3, my friend. It's like,
Aw.
so those interactions taught me too, with leaders that are above me and maybe of a different generation, that they're not always anti, and they're not going to discredit you. And like, some of their leadership that they put in paid dividends down the generations of leadership that made it a safe place for us to serve.
Yeah, and I think, and And I think for them, it was all about skill and putting up with a lot of stuff, especially World War II. I mean, so if they see, I don't know, sometimes even when I met Chuck Yeager the first time, I had heard his reputation preceded him and how he felt about women. And I was like, I told my boss, "You want me to interact with this guy?" I said, "He says something sideways to me because he has two things he could say. I'm gonna take my name tag off and I'm gonna punch an 80-year-old man." Like I was like, "For real, do you want this to happen?" And then when he saw me and he saw I had Navy wings, he was like, he was really cool. And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you're not so bad.
Yeah.
I don't have to hit you with my left this time around."
Yeah.
But I don't know, there's something about them that they respect the job that you do.
Mhm.
Like I don't know if after them, I don't know, maybe people made it more difficult or maybe they're just very
Yeah.
pragmatic and like, oh, if you can do the mission, you're cool with me.
Yeah. The
I don't
jet
know.
doesn't know if you're a man or a woman.
Doesn't know. That's what I like about, yeah, that's what I like about the aircraft. It has no preconceived notion about who you are. It just cares if you put the correct inputs in or not.
Yeah.
And it will respond. It doesn't give a crap.
Yeah.
So maybe the guys of those days, I don't want to say they didn't really give a crap, but I think as they got older and wiser, as I'm getting older and wiser, is that like some things don't really matter. Like it's the skill level. It's the
Yeah.
what you bring to the table. So
Yeah. Well, in the fighter community too, like, you're taking shots, you're evading, there's like ranges you have to meet, there's, shots, you have to be locked to the right target
yeah,
and those are all objective. There's nothing subjective about it. Either
no,
you do your job or you don't. And so that you come back in and you review the tape and they can't be like, you suck because you're a girl. It's like, well, then why did I win the war single-handedly for our side? Like, just review the tape and look at the data. Like, the data doesn't lie. So
yeah.
that was kind of the respite to people kind of feeling like you don't belong there. Like, well, I do because look, you can review my tape. I did my job.
And I always, and I'm not saying in the military people don't have their own, I forgot what the term is, their own web to weave about you or do something to you. But I always tell people when you perform all the time, when you perform at the highest level, eventually they can't say anything. If you keep doing it, someone's going to call the other person out on their BS for what's happening.
So, Colonel Merrill, do you have any good leadership memories, lessons that you learned? Maybe not even in the airplane, but something else that you learned, maybe from a bad example of leadership
I
where you
wouldn't
had to intervene.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it was a bad example. Like the one on the flight deck on the back of a frigate on the flight deck, that was bad. Um this one it wasn't, there was no malicious intent, but it could have I like you could see the future and you could say no good will come of this. Great guy, fighter guy. As he was working, he was doing his thing. But eventually I started hearing something very strange that he was doing. And I didn't believe people because people like saying something weird. He's saying that he's a white male fighter pilot and he doesn't understand. And I'm like, what? Like this man, I could go to his office, I could talk to him. He supports my office and everything we do, the policies that we're doing, implementing. And I go, no way, I don't believe you. Like I tell people, I was like,
Yeah.
I don't believe you. They're like, ma'am, he's saying some weird, wacky things. I'm like, you guys are out of your mind. So one day we were on something and he goes, well, I don't understand that because I'm a white male fighter pilot. And
Pull up, pull up.
I look at
Crickets.
him and he's still talking and I'm like, so how do you deal with someone who's saying something that is like borderline inappropriate or just makes people feel uncomfortable? He's the boss, he's saying things that's making people feel weird. And so I was like, how am I going to address him? And I said, okay, at that time, there were 360 reviews, peer reviews going on. And
What does
at,
360 review mean?
yeah, 360 review, they do in the civilian sector too. So, senior leadership or management,
Mhm.
they get reviews from their peers and
Okay.
subordinates and people above them.
Okay.
So it's a 360-degree look on how they're performing
Okay.
above and below their pay grade. So I was like, okay, I'm going to write it on his peer review. And it's supposed to be no one can see it.
It's
And,
anonymous.
yeah, it is not. It could be anonymous. You can
Okay.
write your name.
But you're like the only Black woman major. So they get the demographic,
Yeah.
your
So
anonymous feedback.
so I write on the feedback, I go, "Sir, please stop referring to yourself as a white male fighter pilot. You're making people feel uncomfortable." And then I said, "You know who this is. If you have any questions, hey, just give me a shout." And I said, I told him what the problem was, and I said, recommend you say something else, or say that I don't understand. And I said, you know who this is. If you want more fidelity on the situation, just let me know. Next day turns around, get a call at 3 o'clock, wants to see you. I'm like, come on, what time? 5:30. I'm like, no, because it's like at the end of the day, I want to go home. And I walk in and I'm like, hey, sir, how's everything going? And we're having some idle chatter. And I'm just looking at him like, just get to the point. He goes, Merrill, I got to ask you a question. And I go, yes, sir, I did write that. And he goes, he goes, okay. And he's like, well, and we start talking. We have this very open and honest discussion. He's like, well, Merrill, I want to say it. I'm saying it because I don't understand. Like, diversity, equity, inclusion. This is when we started talking about it a lot. He's like, I'm a white male fighter pilot. I don't know what else to say. And I go, sir, we know you're white. We could see you. And I was like, dude, we know that. You wear a flight suit and you have wings and you talk with your hands. We know you're a fighter pilot. And I said, you don't have to do any of that. I said, just say, hey, I don't understand. Can you please explain it to me?
Yeah.
Or say, oh, I grew up in the suburbs. I don't even say that. I was like, no religion,
Yeah.
no gender,
Yeah.
no race, anything. Just say you don't understand.
Yeah.
And
Those things don't excuse you from being open-minded.
yes, it just like I said, and I told him, I said, you kind of sound elitist. Don't do that. I said, I know your heart's in the right place. I said, but I don't want you to say anything that someone may misunderstand, and then they write a complaint on the IG. Like,
Yeah.
he was a nice man. He was trying to get things done. He was a cool dude. I would love to hear his stories. But even till this day, I mean, we still keep in touch. We still laugh about it.
Yeah.
And I think if you have a boss that's trying their best, I love the fact that he was trying to do things the right way, but it was coming out the wrong way. But he was open to criticism.
Yes.
He was receptive to it, and he changed. And I thought that was great of him. Like, it increased my respect for him. And he was just the kind of guy that I would go to bat for, because he understood, he just understood. And he
Yeah.
was just trying to be a better person. And I wish more people would be like that and not stick to their guns. Well, I'm still going to say because I'm a 3-star. Well, okay, you're going to be at the end of a complaint eventually.
Yeah.
Yes. And it might be filed by me, but no, no. But yeah, I like that story because some people need to understand that they don't understand. And
Mhm.
they need to ask people who live in that realm, like, what is it like for you? How
Mhm.
does it feel for you? And kind of come to their own conclusions. I mean, we talked about that, having conversations where you
Mm.
don't agree or you don't understand, but you walk away understanding the beauty of the differences.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Something our country could use a lot of right
Oh my
now.
gosh, we could just pour it and slather ourselves and just
Yeah.
just jump in a pool of
Just
understanding.
like bottle it and sell it. We'd be millionaires.
Oh my gosh. Some people we have to force feed at this
Yeah.
point, but
IB.
IB, knock him out, just like hook him up, man. Yeah. There's beauty in having differences. There's beauty in bringing diverse opinions and stuff to a conversation, because it goes back to the Starship Enterprise.
Mhm.
How Captain Kirk boldly went where no one has gone before,
Yeah.
brought all these skill sets together to figure out different things, and what you may not have, someone else has based on their experiences. You cannot discount them, or you shouldn't. And if you do, I don't think you're going to be as successful as a leader as you
Mhm.
should be. You can run over people and be a tyrant, but eventually tyranny will catch up with you.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it'll be detrimental to your whole mission.
And it will, yeah, and it'll undermine the culture for decades. I mean, it's almost like putting your DNA print of leadership on people. And how do you want to be remembered? You have one in hourglass of all this sand. What's your one grain of sand going to be in addition to this? So, the fact that we can imprint DNA of what we do, like to our
Mhm.
kids, and how we respond to things, and how we um, just handle ourselves, and how we're as leaders. What's that one thing? that maybe you could have done a little better, or you totally just sucked at, and you're just
Hmm.
like, you go back and go, "Oh man, I really jacked that up. I wish I could do better."
I could have done it better. Maybe just I was a director of operations as a reservist, but I was working for an active duty squadron,
Mhm.
and there was a really high operational tempo, which meant we had a lot of airplanes flying. Our maintenance squadron is completely separate. The relationship had been really rough when I got there, and so I did a lot of work to repair it. And they wanted us to increase the number of missions that we were flying, and we shared a maintenance squadron with another um, F-16 squadron that did all the test and evaluation stuff at Nellis Air Force Base. So this maintenance squadron itself was spread really thin between two different squadrons flying schedules, and a squadron's flying schedule usually falls in a certain window, and that so two different squadrons makes it longer workday for them, and it was a lot of interaction. um, but I got really burned out, and I had a lot of personal stuff going on, and I kept it to myself. I was going through some custody battles, court things had been going on for years and years. I was a single parent. I feel like I did a great job helping the people in my squadron, and you could tell, hey, something's not quite right, why don't you come in, shut the doors, or anything you need, or like, hey, I thought your daughter had a dance recital today, like there's nothing that you need to do to get done, like why don't you go home? And so I did a really good job taking care of other people, and I left myself out of that, and I got so burned out that before my tour was done, I had to go into the group commander and be like, I really appreciate this opportunity, but I can't do it anymore. And I wish that I had managed myself differently so I had an outlet of people in the squadron that I could have talked to the same way I extended like that kind of safe space for other people. I know for sure they would have been,
Yeah.
very receptive of it, and it would have changed kind of the dynamic. So I really felt like I left my squadron down because I feel like I've made a great impression, and I changed things for the better between our relationship within the squadron, and then just having people. There's no such thing as balance, right? You're spinning plates, and you just got to spin the one that's going to fall so you can keep them all going. And
Yes.
sometimes it's, your marriage, and sometimes it's your children, and sometimes it's your education, and sometimes it's flying an airplane or a check ride or whatnot. And I did a good job teaching that, but I didn't take care of myself in the right way, and it led to me leaving a really great job early that I really really loved. So I don't know. That's a real vulnerable moment for me. It's kind of, I feel like a failure, but at the same time, I really needed to step back from that. So it was kind of a success in that way, but I definitely could have handled it differently.
Yeah, so I yeah, I definitely understand that there are times where, especially as women, we are so concerned and consumed with taking care of everyone else that sometimes we neglect ourselves. And I think I have a similar story to you. Um, at the time, I was the acting commander at the physiological support squadron because I was the DO. Was the acting commander for about 6 months. I was doing a four-ship upgrade for my instructor qual in the T-38. My mom had cancer
Mm.
in New York at the time. She had brain tumors, going to chemo and radiation, so I couldn't be there.
Oh man.
I was able to. I found out about it when I just came back from a deployment. I think I was in Michigan at the time when she told me, "Oh, I'm in a couple of days. I'm gonna have surgery." And so I had to go home, drop my stuff, jump on a plane, see her get rolled into the hospital, and I was gone for a week. Came back, and I was doing all that stuff. So I was doing poorly in my four-ship upgrade. I was hooking rides, so failing rides. I was the acting commander in the squadron, taking care of 130 people. I had one guy in the squadron tried to unalive himself,
Mm.
so to visit him, um, and then I needed that four ship to get my instructor because I was doing my instructor upgrade in house to go to Palmdale to be the commander, and so like I was breaking, and I did not reach out to anyone. And I, as the time as the acting commander, I was like, look, if you have problems, come to my office,
Mm-hmm.
and do all these things. But I was not. I was doing a poor job, and the number one thing is to lead yourself, right?
Yeah.
So I was failing across the board to the point that finally I got the fourth ship out of the way. I was at the breaking point, but somehow managed to get the fourth ship out of the way, which is another story where my check pilot, thank goodness he leads with integrity because he was told by the stand eval guy to fail me regardless of how I did. So that's another story and another day. We'll sidebar that. Passed my check ride. Um, Still was commanding. My mother was doing better, but then the 1RS commander, the training commander who I work for, he's like, Merrill, what the hell is going on? And at that point, I said, hey, can we talk? And that was the first time I told anyone what was going on in my life, my personal life. And
Yeah.
he was like, holy ish. He's
Yeah.
like, we need to stop. Like,
Yeah.
and I said, look, I'm good now. I said, the fourth ship is done and I can focus on everything else. I said, if you asked me a week ago, I would have probably said, yes, you're correct.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was the one time where I felt like I failed as a leader because I wasn't doing what I had been preaching for everyone else to do. And
Yeah.
sometimes you get caught up in those things and you're like, I could take it. U-2 pilots were notorious for being that person on the island who will suck it up as much as possible, but then it manifests in, that, or heaven forbid someone gets a DUI
Yeah.
or someone, goes further. So,
Yeah.
Single seat aircraft,
Yeah.
you got that mentality.
You got to be ready to go.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
I think sometimes because not everyone is on your side either, that you feel like maybe that guy who wanted to bust you on your four ship, like you don't want to give him any more excuses to say, well, she's not on her game. Because, the truth is, sometimes for me, when everything was going to hell personally at home, getting in that cockpit and hitting, starting the motors and shutting that lid, like you leave all that stuff outside.
yeah.
So it can be like a real great, escape from reality for a little bit. You can go be King Kong and do your amazing mission and then come back and then just deal with it when you get back. But you have to know when you cross that line.
Yeah. I definitely crossed that line. Like,
Yeah.
I did a long jump leap over it. So, yeah, at the end of the day, leadership is tough. You got to hold yourself accountable. And then if you
Mhm.
screw up, you screw up. Like, but, you want to take care of people.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talk about, like, in the beginning, leadership. You can read a whole bunch of books on how to be a good leader. You can read, I don't know, extreme ownership? Anyone? Anyone?
Mm.
Jocko? It's extreme ownership, right? You can read that. You can read servant leadership. You can, read books from Jack Welch. You can do all these things. But I think at the end of the day, you could get the principles around them. And I think one of the things that make leaders stand out as better leaders is to understand that you can have some vulnerability and you can be
Yeah.
vulnerable and you can be human. And as long as you articulate those, people will respect you. But you have to lead with a certain compassion and empathy
Yeah.
and lead with that understanding that you've lived a certain life and that is could be 180 degrees out from the other person. You and I have lived different lives.
Yeah.
You lived in the dairy cows of Wisconsin, which I love, and I lived in the concrete jungles of the Bronx. So our
Yeah.
upbringings were different. Our interactions with people were different. I lived in the melting pot. You did not, I'm assuming?
No.
Yes. So to have that compassion and empathy and understanding, I think that's what makes leaders, and to be able to use that to help people adapt to situations. I think that's really key. And if you can't figure it out, and if you're that leader that wrings your hands and can't make a decision, you need to figure that out.
Yeah.
Or have a strong number two who will help guide you through that, or have a good mentor that will help you
Yeah.
guide you through that situation.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know what to call it, like the tenets of the weapons school and the Air Force are humble, credible, and approachable.
Yes.
You're never better than anyone else. Like, I mean, they've got a lot of experience, but you always have to be humble and always know that there's something more that you could learn.
Yes.
Credible, like you got to do your job. And I think, especially as a woman leader, but anybody who wants to be a better leader, just lead by example. That's the best way that you can do that. And then approachable, like you said, like people can come to you with anything. Like you have an, I think open door policy tends to be too cliche, but be approachable, approach your subordinates, make sure that there's that open line of conversation and, no judgment, no retribution outside of what you need to do as a leader to
Right.
maintain good order and discipline in your squadron. But being approachable earlier on keeps worse problems from happening later.
Absolutely. So yeah, open door policy. People could come in your office, but your door's open, so get your ass out and go talk to people.
Yeah, for sure.